Dexter Morgan is a cold-hearted serial killer, yet there are still times messed up things happen to him. From his wife dying to forcefully abandoning his son. Today, we're looking at every time we felt bad for Dexter. Number 1. Killing the wrong man. The code Dexter lives by requires a high level of accuracy. Usually, Dexter's vetting process would ensure that he met the code to a T, but on rare occasions, he got a bit ahead of himself. In Season 4, as Miami Metro is looking for a killer targeting several young models, the homicide department sets its sights on John Farrow, a famous photographer known for his disturbing S&M style photo shoots. Because of his edgy work and general disrespect for women, it seemed clear to everyone that Farrow was guilty. So when Dexter discovers a large pool of dried blood in Farrow's studio, that is all he needs to move forward with his kill ritual. Dexter is able to capture the man quickly following a short vetting process. Unsurprisingly, when he wakes up strapped to Dexter's table, Farrow insists that he is innocent, but Dexter is unfazed.
That's why I see what I do! Beautiful women!
Who are bruised and cut and bleeding.
He figures that almost anyone in Farrow's position would lie just to save their own life. Unmoved by Farrow's pleas, Dexter goes forward with the kill as usual and thinks nothing of it. But when he goes into work the next day, he sees Farrow's assistant being hauled into the station. Confused, Dexter asks Angel why the assistant was being brought in. To Dexter's shock and dismay, Angel informs him that it was actually Farrow's assistant, not the photographer himself, who had killed their original victims.
Isn't that
Farrow's assistant? I just arrested him for the murder of Estrella Carrasco. Yeah. At first it looked like Farrow, but this is airtight.
Complete with a confession and DNA evidence linking him to the crime, the homicide department had an airtight case against Farrow's assistant. There have not been very many times that Dexter killed someone who has never killed anyone themselves. His entire life has been based on the two most important parts of Harry's code: don't get caught and never hurt an innocent. Even with the code, Dexter's actions are morally gray at best. After getting the news from Angel that Farrow was actually innocent, Dexter goes into his lab and slides down the wall, horrified. His failure to properly vet his victim caused him to break Harry's code, the only constant in his life and the foundation for who he is as a person. Dexter's shaken to his core by this reality, and it is a hard watch. For so long, he had based this identity on the fact that he never hurt anyone who did not deserve it. Without Harry's code, he is no different than the people he killed, and that is devastating for Dexter. While others have been disgusted with Dexter in the past, in this instant, he seems to be truly disgusted with himself. Here we see Dexter lose faith in himself, and it is truly a sad sight. Having to leave Harrison behind. Dexter had very few genuine connections in his life. Even the closest relationship he had with his wife and with his sister were founded on lies. So when he decided to leave his only child Harrison, it was nothing short of heartbreaking. Anyone who has experienced loss can relate to the feeling of having to be separated from a person they truly loved. But this was uniquely sad in that Dexter was already a very secluded man. He had so few connections in his life. Additionally, Dexter has always shown a deep-seated desire to protect children, yet here he had to accept that he could not even protect his own son. As season 8 is wrapping up, Dexter is coming to grips with the fact that his life as a serial killer will always place the people he loves in danger. His lifestyle had already led to the deaths of many other people he cared about. Because he did not want the same fate to befall his son, Dexter decides that he has to let his son go.
I love you too.
Daddy loves you?
Bye.
At this time, Dexter was in a serious relationship and was working to help his girlfriend, Hannah McKay, avoid police detection. As a last-ditch effort, he and Hannah made plans to flee to Argentina together with Harrison so she could be free. But after Dexter learns that Deborah was critically injured in a shootout with a high-profile suspect, he can't help but feel responsible.
Deborah's brain was deprived of oxygen for a period of
What do you
time.
mean? I thought you said she was gonna be fine.
I had hoped so.
Dexter knows that had it not been for her proximity to him, Deborah would be okay. With this realization, Dexter understands that he can't be in his son's life without putting him in harm's way. He understands that he has to leave Harrison in someone else's care. With Deb in the hospital, he decides that Hannah is the best person to watch over his son. As a result, Dexter has to give up on relationships with both Hannah and Harrison. Much like after Rita's death, this leaves Dexter all alone with no interpersonal connections to keep him grounded. While I understand that Dexter has chosen a life that calls for isolation, to witness the repercussions of forced separation is heavy. It's obvious that Dexter needs acceptance and love, but he rarely gets it. You would expect to be able to find familiarity in their child if no one else, but Dexter can't even rely on that, having been forced to leave his son behind for his own good. Number 3. When Lumen leaves. In season 5, following the death of his wife Rita, Dexter finds himself in a quasi-romantic relationship with a woman named Lumen Pierce. Dexter set out to kill a man named Boyd Fowler after learning that he was killing women and preserving them in barrels filled with formaldehyde.
I want my wife back. This will have to do.
Though more difficult to subdue than most of his victims, Dexter is eventually able to get Fowler on his table. After the kill, Dexter discovers that one of Boyd's victims-to-be had seen everything. Dexter knew she could expose him as a murderer if she lived, but he was compelled to save her anyway.
It's okay. I'm not gonna hurt you.
Dexter tries to neutralize the threat she poses by sending her back to her family, but Lumen returns to get revenge on the people who abducted her. When her plan to kill one of the abusers got awry, she is forced to call Dexter for help.
She shot me. She's alive.
With no other options, Dexter rushes to help her finish the job. With the murders of 2 of her abductors, their fates are inevitably intertwined, and Lumen and Dexter start to develop a deeper relationship. Together, they pick off Lumen's captors one by one to deliver her the justice she would never get otherwise. As they continue to work together to take down the Barrel Girl gang, Dexter becomes more attached to Lumen. Yet again, Dexter feels that he may actually be accepted by someone. Lumen knew of Dexter's true nature and did not turn her back on him. Unlike Harry, Dokes, Lila, and Miguel, Lumen did not seek to control or destroy Dexter's darkness. She also saw good in Dexter, which is not something he typically experiences. His attachment to Lumen was organic and affirming for Dexter. Lumen's desire to kill was fueled by the rage she felt towards the 5 men who took her. She was not innately driven to kill in the way Dexter was. This occurs to Dexter, but it does not dissuade him from pursuing her romantically. The connection he had with Lumen was just that strong for him. Unfortunately, Lumen did not feel the same. When they finally tracked down and killed the last of her abductors, Lumen realized that she was no longer wanted or needed to kill anyone.
I have to leave.
But she knew that Dexter's desire to kill was permanent, and she seemed to understand the risk that posed for her. Lumen wanted to move on from her experience as a victim and live a normal life, something she knew would not be possible if she stayed with Dexter. She breaks the news to Dexter just as he seems to be making bigger plans for their future together. Dexter is distraught and all but begs her not to leave.
Don't go. You can't.
But in the end, he recognizes that Lumen is right. His urge to kill would be with him forever, and she would not be able to live a regular life with him. This is especially sad when we consider the fact that for the first time in a while, Dexter really was alone. His life with Rita was destroyed when the Trinity Killer murdered her, and his stepchildren, Aster and Cody, moved in with their grandparents as a result. Lumen was a chance for Dexter to start rebuilding a life after Rita. But unfortunately, the moments only get worse from here. Number 4, Harry tells him to stay away. As season 2 of the original series comes to a close, Sergeant James Dokes has learned that Dexter is the Bay Harbor Butcher. As a result, Dexter is forced to trap Dokes until he can figure out what to do next. Because Dokes does not technically fit the code, Dexter was stuck in a tricky situation. Though he couldn't kill Dokes, an innocent, if he released him, he risked breaking the code anyway by getting caught. To get out of this conundrum, Dexter decides to frame Dokes as the Bay Harbor Butcher. Part of his plan required that he give the Butcher a final victim. When Dexter gets wind that there is a criminal who fits Harry's code headed for the cabin where he has Dokes locked up, he plans to kill him and implicate Dokes.
You go after killers, you take out killers, I get that, but this is some sick ritual, man. You need help.
This kill would be the final element to solidify his frame job of Dokes as the Bay Harbor Butcher. When the criminal arrives at the cabin, Dexter goes into his ritual, sedating the man and strapping him to a kill table. Dokes is understandably horrified by Dexter's actions. He pleads with Dexter not to kill the man, but it's no use.
Logan! You don't have to do this! You don't have to kill this man!
After he's killed and dismembered his victim, Dexter tries to speak with Dokes, but Dokes is disgusted with him and tells him to stay away.
Just stay away from me.
I've heard those words before.
When he hears this, Dexter is reminded of the time his father had walked in during his kill ritual. Much like Dokes, Harry was deeply disturbed by what he saw. He quickly fled the room and vomited. Concerned and confused, Dexter goes to check on Harry, but Harry refuses to look at him and tells him to stay away from him.
Just stay away. Please.
Harry was the one person in the world who knew the extent of Dexter's darkness. He was aware of Dexter's history and raised him to be what he was. The rejection that Dexter experienced in that moment was written all over his face. Even his own father thought he was a monster. Harry's reaction all but confirmed one of Dexter's biggest fears, that there was something wrong with him and no one would ever fully accept him. Dokes' rightful disgust with Dexter had to have brought all the emotions rushing back. It's sad to see that even long after Harry's death, Dexter was still impacted by his father's rebuff and sought acceptance that would never come. Number 5, Miguel's betrayal. Dexter was a man with few friends. Despite his many attempts to connect with others, he is rarely able to create a relationship that sticks. So in season 3, when Dexter begins to bond with Miami's senior assistant district attorney, Miguel Prado, it seems unlikely that the connection will develop into anything bigger. This is underscored by the fact that Dexter accidentally killed Miguel's brother, Oscar, while stalking another target.
You attacked me with a knife in a dope dealer's house. No, Oscar, you certainly did not suffer from the tragedy.
Luckily for Dexter, the police department believes that Dexter's original target, a criminal by the name Freebo, is responsible for Oscar's death. Freebo was also believed to have killed 2 girls years earlier and gotten off on a technicality. This puts Dexter in a race against the homicide department to find Freebo and eliminate him to ensure that he can't be cleared for the murder of Oscar. Hell-bent on getting justice for his brother, Miguel Prado begins cozying up to Dexter to get as much information on the case as possible. Though Dexter is initially uninterested in creating the friendship, Miguel pushes until Dexter eventually relents. Slowly but surely, Dexter begins to view Miguel as a kindred spirit and opens up to him in a way he seldom has with others. Dexter successfully tracks Freebo down, but he doesn't realize that he isn't the only one looking for him that night. As Dexter is preparing to kill Freebo, Miguel is also on his trail, still falsely believing him to be responsible for Oscar's death. Miguel had set out to kill Freebo himself, but he was too late. Instead, he comes upon the scene just after Dexter had already done the deed. Thinking on his feet, Dexter claims that he killed Freebo in self-defense. Rather than being upset, Miguel is grateful to Dexter for killing Freebo, feeling that his brother's death had finally been avenged. From there, Miguel and Dexter bond over their shared knowledge of Freebo's death. Together, the pair sets out to deliver justice to other murderers who had slipped through the cracks of the legal system. Dexter attempts to control Miguel and teach him Harry's code, but Miguel becomes more and more obsessed with their vigilantism. In no time, Miguel's zeal leads him to step outside of the code. He kills an innocent woman for his own convenience and is even planning to kill Lieutenant LaGuerta.
Lieutenant, Dexter here. Hey, I came across something you'll be interested in. It kind of has to do with the whole Miguel Prado, Ellen Wolf thing you wanted me to look at. You there?
When Dexter learns this, he realizes that Miguel had just been manipulating him so he could learn how to kill people without getting caught. In the end, Dexter is forced to kill Miguel to protect innocent people from his perverse style of justice and to prevent Miguel from exposing Dexter as a killer.
Friends forgive.
But I don't forgive you.
Once again, Dexter is left friendless and feeling that he is meant to be alone.
But I finally just have to accept it. I'll always be alone.
Over the course of season 3, Dexter seems to have been forming a genuine bond with Miguel. His life as a serial killer requires so much secrecy that he trusts almost no one. At times, Dexter entertains the idea of having someone in his life who truly sees and accepts him for what he is. But it never works out. It's piteous to watch Dexter fail at one relationship after the other, especially when he puts as much faith in someone as he did Miguel. Unfortunately, this isn't even the saddest relationship Dexter would lose. Number 6, Rita's death. Season 4 follows Dexter as he stalks the Trinity Killer, a serial murderer who has managed to kill lots of people while avoiding police for decades. At the end of Season 3, Dexter and Rita got married, opening Dexter up to a whole new world of responsibilities he had not faced before. As the 4th season progresses, Dexter is trying to learn the ropes of being a father and a husband while also balancing his life as a serial killer. Initially believing it impossible, Dexter finds renewed hope in his ability to handle all 3 roles after meeting who he would later learn to be the Trinity Killer, Arthur Mitchell. Despite being a serial killer for most of his life, Arthur was able to keep a squeaky clean public image. He was seen as a dedicated churchgoer, volunteer, and a great family man overall by all who claimed to know him. Watching Arthur navigate life as a killer and a father intrigued Dexter, who had become overwhelmed with his own attempt to be both.
You killed a man.
You killed someone?
You, of all people, act appalled.
It is for this reason Dexter was hesitant to take Trinity out. Believing that Arthur could teach him how to balance his life a bit, Dexter would spare Trinity's life a number of times. Unfortunately, this mercy would come back to bite Dexter in the worst way. As the season ramps up, Dexter begins to realize that Arthur has been tormenting his family by lording over them with an iron fist. Dexter visits the Mitchell clan for Thanksgiving, and it's then that Trinity's mask slips as he lashes out at each of his family members individually. By the end of the visit, Dexter had to drag Arthur off of his son, threatening to kill him then and there. Following that ordeal, Arthur is on high alert and looking to eliminate the threat that Dexter poses to his fake life as a loving father and husband. He sets out to rid himself of Dexter permanently. Dexter is able to get the upper hand in the end, capturing and killing the Trinity Killer just before he was able to skip town. After one of the most merciful kills of the series, Dexter returns home fully believing that he had finally bested Arthur. But when Dexter tries calling his wife's cell phone and hears her phone ringing inside of the house, he realizes that something is not right. In order to protect his family from Arthur, Dexter had arranged for Rita to leave town with their son Harrison. But Rita forgot her passport and returned home to retrieve it, and it's then that she likely encountered Trinity. When Dexter returned home from killing Trinity and heard Rita's phone, the next thing he heard were Harrison's cries coming from somewhere deeper in the house. Dexter rushes towards the sound, ending up in the bathroom where he sees that Rita has been killed.
Born in blood. Both of us.
Killed in Trinity's signature style, Rita was left in a tub of her bloody bathwater where she'd bled out. Dexter instantly realizes that in his hesitation to kill Trinity, he provided the madman the opportunity to hurt his family. Watching Dexter desperately try to revive Rita before realizing it's too late is heart-wrenching.
I wonder if Rita's looking at this same moon at this same moment.
And when he recognizes that his error had likely led to the traumatization of his own son, it's nothing short of pitiful. His life with Rita may have originated as just a cover, but Dexter truly cared for her and her children. Rita was a rare connection in Dexter's life that humanized him. He had tried and failed so many times in life to create lasting bonds, and now that he had finally managed to, their relationship was cut short at the hands of a serial killer. There is no telling what Trinity revealed to Rita about her husband before killing her, but there is a non-zero chance that she died knowing that Dexter was related to her demise and had been hiding much more from her than she could have ever realized. In his catatonic state, Dexter goes through the motions of reporting Rita's murder to the police, and with her death, he finds himself more alone than ever before. It's obvious that Dexter would never be able to recreate the relationship he had with Rita, and the fact that it was his own arrogance that put her in danger makes this reality all the more difficult to swallow. Number 7. Deb dies. Deborah and Dexter Morgan had a close but complicated relationship as adoptive siblings. Despite their emotional distance, Deborah loved and protected her brother fiercely. Even after Deborah discovered that Dexter was the Bay Harbor butcher, she remained loyal to him. Rather than turning Dexter in, Deb chooses to protect her brother's secret and inadvertently becomes an accomplice in the crime. When LaGuerta starts to get close to identifying Dexter as the butcher, Dexter plans to kill her to save himself from prosecution, but Deb is able to figure out Dexter's plan before he can go through with it. After tracking LaGuerta down to the shipping yard, she interferes with Dexter's plan and pleads for him not to go through with it. LaGuerta regains consciousness as the siblings argue about what to do next. She demands that Deborah kill Dexter as a good cop should.
Do it! Shoot him! This is not who you are.
You're a good person.
But in a moment of inner conflict, Deb chose to shoot LaGuerta instead, saving her brother against all reason yet again. This was not an easy decision for Deborah, who spirals after killing LaGuerta. She ends up quitting her job as a lieutenant of homicide, falling off the grid, and turning to drugs to quiet her guilty mind and cope with her loss of self. For the first time, we see Deborah turn on Dexter, ignoring his attempts to connect with her and eventually telling him that she killed the wrong person in the shipping yard that night. Still, Dexter is determined to bring his sister home and is worried about what will happen to her if he doesn't get her away from the shady characters she's been working with since the incident.
You know what she's been going through. She could have done something.
After counseling from Dr. Evelyn Vogel, Deb seems to be coming on board with returning to her life. For the entirety of season 8, Dexter and Deborah are struggling to make sense of their relationship, with Dexter set on salvaging whatever was left of it. So when he finally starts to make progress in that regard, only for Deborah to die weeks later, it's sincerely devastating. Dexter had been working with Dr. Vogel to catch a disturbed killer that was plaguing Miami. Her own son, Oliver Saxon, was going on a killing spree in the city.
It's a match. Saxon is Vogel's son.
Dubbed the brain surgeon by law enforcement, Saxon was killing people and dissecting their brains to get revenge on his mother for abandoning him when he was a child.
He was dating my neighbor until he killed her in her apartment 2 doors down from mine.
Although he proves to be a slippery target, Dexter is eventually able to capture the Saxon. Parallel to his pursuit with Vogel, Dexter had been gearing up to flee the country with his partner Hannah McKay and his son Harrison. Excited to begin this new chapter of his life and interested in changing as a person, Dexter decides to call the police on the brain surgeon rather than kill him himself. He calls Deborah, and when she arrives, he leaves her alone to make her arrest as he heads to meet Hannah and Harrison. Unfortunately, everything does not go to plan, and Deborah ends up getting shot by the brain surgeon before she can place him under arrest. She is rushed to the hospital, and while it initially looks like she will recover from her injuries, she suffers a stroke while in a coma. This drops her chance of a full recovery to 0, and the doctor informs Dexter that she will probably never recover her cognitive functioning, essentially making her brain dead.
Mr. Morgan, I'm afraid I don't have good news. I'm very sorry.
When the police eventually capture Saxon, Dexter takes the opportunity to kill him for what he did to Deborah.
No, I'm here to kill you with that pen.
After killing the brain surgeon, Dexter returns to the hospital and says his final words to his sister.
I can't leave you like this. I'm your big brother.
As she's hooked up to multiple medical devices. He apologizes and then turns off his sister's life support. Deb had mentioned that if she ever ended up in a vegetative state, that she would want to be killed. So Dexter most likely saw this as a merciful death. In the chaos of preparing the hospital for a hurricane headed towards Miami, Dexter is able to sneak Deborah's body out of the hospital and onto his boat. In his final act with Deborah, he lifts her body and tosses it over the side of the boat, burying her at sea. In his life, Dexter has had to endure his birth mother dying, his adoptive mother and father dying, his biological brother dying, and his wife dying. Now, one of his only remaining tethers he had in his life was Deborah, hence his insistence on getting back to her after LaGuerta's death. After all of that effort to rebuild the relationship, Dexter has to watch her die just like everyone else he had ever loved. He couldn't help but feel responsible for Deborah's death. Even when he is trying to do the right thing, his life as a serial killer brings destruction to everyone around him.
I destroy everyone I love. I have to protect them from me.
In the end, Dexter decides to ride his boat into the hurricane and disappear for good to prevent himself from causing any more deaths.
Is this a new beginning? Or the beginning of the end?